Really, no, I don't.
Then why do you
But I
fear
didn't
what happens after you die?
because what happened after 1990 didn't happen before 1990. I never had the experience that I had. I never had the friends I had. I never had the emotions I had. I never had the experiences and
Okay.
everything.
So then we can see, so that's a subtle but important point, right? Because then what we're talking about is that your attachment or your avoidance of death is out of an attachment of life. That your only complaint with before 1990 is that you didn't have the shit that you have now. Ergo, what you want to avoid is you don't want to lose what you have now.
No, I don't.
So if we think about, so then it's sort of like it's sort of immaterial, and now it sort of makes sense, right? Because you kind of said if there's life after death and there's eternity of consciousness, then that's scary, and if there isn't consciousness, that's equally scary. Therefore, we can conclude that like what you're afraid of has nothing to do with whether you exist or not after you die. What you're afraid of, right? Because both of those options create the same reaction to you. It's all the same. Whether life ever after.
I haven't decided which one is more terrifying yet.
Yeah, but they're both terrifying. So like, therefore, we can conclude logically that like the terror doesn't come from either of those things because that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So then, and we hear, and what you said is just consistent with your earlier feeling, right? Which is that what you're afraid of is the loss of what you have. It's an attachment to. It's not about like what happens to you after you die. It's not like about your consciousness. It's the lack of the experiences that you have today that you're afraid of.
Yeah, and I did a thought experiment with this, and I thought about this a lot. What would happen, how would I feel if basically whenever you died, your soul was effectively recycled and all of your experiences were wiped and you just did it all over again? And I still don't really know how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's because you're... So what is a thought experiment? Is it Vidya or Jnana?
I think it's Jnana attempting to be Vidya.
It's Vidya attempting to be Jnana.
Oh, I must have gotten them. Yes, I must have gotten confused.
Right. So it's like it's thinking your way. It's like a thought experiment about sex is not an orgasm.
No, not quite.
Right. So like you can think your way, and this is why I think you don't think that the conversation is going to be productive, because you're thinking that the answers are going to come from the conversation. The answers aren't going to come from the conversation. All the conversation is going to do, hopefully, is give you a roadmap to experience. Yes. Because I don't think you know how to do that.
No, maybe not.
Yeah. So, and I guess this is what we're talking about. You want to go back to laziness, or you want to do this?
I think that we can do this maybe a couple more minutes, and then we can go back to laziness. How about
okay? So a couple more minutes. Oh, it's not enough time, but okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do. So let's start by sort of saying that, like, do you follow me that I think that your fear of death is not a fear of what's beyond, it's a fear of loss of what you have now. It's a fear of the loss of life.
So much so that I whenever I was very young, I began recording a lot of the things that I did whenever I was a kid. And I wanted a video camera whenever I was 11 years old, because I had the foresight and I realized that, I thought to myself, I can't really remember what happened when I was 6. But I always wanted to be able to preserve and keep the memories that I had, and I've always done that, so I would never forget.
Yeah, so you're holding on to life.
Absolutely.
Right? And so then if you want to conquer your fear of death, I know this sounds fucking like a meditation calendar, but what you really have to do is let go of your attachment of life.
Right? That's what I was saying about the moments of enlightenment.
Yeah. So now let's talk about that. Like, what does that even mean, a moment of enlightenment? What does that mean?
When you confront things that you're completely afraid of, but for whatever reason you're not afraid of them. You look at you look at death in the face, or you look at, for me, dentists or rocks. These are two things I'm very afraid of. And you look at that and you just do it. And you approach it, and I don't know really what the best word is for it, but yeah, I don't think internalize is it. but you let it become part of you and you accept it as a reality. That's
Okay.
maybe the best way I could verbalize it.
Yeah, so then let me ask you, let's ask some questions about the quality of moments of enlightenment. So you say they're moments, ergo it's not permanent, right?
Yes.
So what fluctuates between a moment of enlightenment and a moment of not enlightenment?
I don't really know, because the weird thing about the moments of enlightenment is that sometimes I'll feel that way whenever things are going very well and I'm happy, and other times I'll feel that way where I don't care about dying or anything like that whenever things are going very not well. And I think that's really kind of interesting, because both ends, both ends of the horseshoe meet at the same place nearly. And I think that's what happens. It's
Okay,
really-
excellent. So that's a very important observation. That
Yeah.
the current state of emotions does not affect the moment of enlightenment. And in fact, the beauty of the moment of enlightenment is that it allows you to experience both of those extremes with a certain tranquility,
Yes.
right? So, like, that's pretty cool. So now we can think about a couple of things. So the first thing that we figured out about moments of enlightenment is that they fluctuate. It's not a permanent state. It's not like, when you're leveling up in WoW, like once you hit level 14, you're no longer level 13. Right? You're never
Yeah.
going to be level 13 again. We think about life as sort of a linear progression.
Is it not?
Well, there are moments of enlightenment, linear progression.
I think that it's more or less an acceptance and just a complete acceptance of the linear progression. I think more so.
Okay, so I'll unpack what that means in a second, but let me just point out to you that even in your words, right, you call it a moment of enlightenment. It doesn't imply a linear progression, it implies temporary, because it's a moment,
Oh yeah.
right? So the first thing that we can understand about moments of enlightenment is that they fluctuate. So it's not like you level up and then you're more enlightened than you were the day before. It's not a permanent gain, it's a fluctuance of consciousness.
I do feel like learning more things and having more experiences and thinking more does help me have them more often though.
There we
When I
go.
was a kid,
Okay,
I
hold
was
on. But there's a very important subtlety there, right?
Okay.
You can level up your capacity to have them more often, but they in themselves are not permanent. That's a big difference. You can level up your ability, you can level up your odds to have a moment of enlightenment, but the moment of enlightenment is not something that you can level up.
No, it's perfect.
And then it goes, right? So like what we're talking about is increasing the odds, but we're not talking, like there's a big difference between, it's like, how can I say this? Okay, so like in WoW we've got different colors of loot, right?
Yeah.
And so like at the end of the day, like a treasure chest has a certain like loot table, and so we can level up the quality of our treasure chest. Just because we are getting a high quality loot doesn't mean that we're going to get a high quality loot next time. It's like each treasure chest is its own roll of the dice. Each moment of enlightenment is a temporary thing that has a one-time result. You have that moment of enlightenment or you don't have that moment of enlightenment. So I'm just pointing out that there's a fluctuance there that's not linear.
A fluctuance that's not linear.
Right? So it's not like a moment of enlightenment. It's not like you level up and then you're enlightened more. You can level up to increase the quality of chests that you get, but at the end of the day, whether you get the moment of enlightenment or not is still like a variable. Like it's not.
You don't have it all the time, and I think this is something that I remember. I think that it was like. I think somebody asked Mother Teresa or something like that what they pray for, and they said prayed for faith, and it was kind of a weird answer to me, because you'd assume that somebody who was such a devoted servant of God would not need to worry about that.
No.
But even the most devoted servants still also pray for faith.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely, right? So because I think
Yeah.
faith, what they talk about, so here's what I think a moment of enlightenment is. I'll sort of give you, now I'm gonna give you a paradigm instead of asking you questions. You're welcome to attack or poke holes in it, okay? So moments of enlightenment are fluctuations of consciousness, and consciousness fluctuates, right? Like we know that consciousness, you have sleeping and you have waking, and then even within waking consciousness, you have different modes. You have lazy consciousness and you have
Yeah.
non-lazy consciousness. And the frustrating for a lot of lazy people is that they're able to do the right thing sometimes, but then we have this perception of linearly leveling up. And then they wake up the next day and they're not able to clean their room the way they were the day before, and they're like, how the fuck does that work? Because I could do it yesterday, I should be able to do it today. But no, that's not how it works because it's not linear. It's just the state of your consciousness at a particular time allows you to do things or not do things. Like sometimes you run away from the dentist and sometimes you face the dentist. And the interesting thing is that you would assume logically that like in the moments that you face your dentist, your fear is lower, and because your fear is lower, then that's why you're able to face that. If we actually look at the data, that's not true. Your fear is always the same. Sometimes you're able to conquer your fear and other times you're not. Right?
Okay.
And so what's happening is that the state of it's like how, like, it's not that we level up our character, it's that like the controller that we're using sometimes works really well and has really tight controls and does what you want it to, and sometimes the controller you're using is unplugged. And when the controller's unplugged,
dysfunctional controllers.
it's a really dysfunctional controller. Your character is the same, but like sometimes you can activate your character and sometimes you can't activate your character.
Yeah, sometimes you can overcome things and sometimes you can't. I think that dichotomy of instead of trying to lower your fear, you're effectively making your controller better. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. Right? So what I'm saying, so like I'm trying to point out to you that you say that you have these moments of enlightenment, and like it's weird, right? Because you're saying they can happen when I'm sad and when I'm happy. And that's like an odd observation, but let's not let our preconceptions shape the data. Let's accept our data for what it is and change our notion of how the world works. So moments of enlightenment are independent of happiness and sadness. Moments of enlightenment are temporary. There are things that you can do to cultivate the occurrence of moments of enlightenment, but you can't ever make them. You can't ever guarantee them.
I am all too familiar with that. Getting loot in World of Warcraft.
Yep, absolutely, right?
Fundamental understanding of mine, yes.
Yes. So you can set yourself up to get whatever, Illidan's Warglaives or whatever that first orange loot was.
54 weeks.
But there's nothing you can do to like you can set yourself up to get that drop, but like at the end of the day, there's a certain amount of RNG that's involved. And that's how moments of enlightenment work, right? At the end of the day, you can't ever create one. So now the question becomes, okay, hold on, let me think about this. So now where do we go from here? Okay, we're talking about death. You with me so far?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So now I'm going to, hold on, let me just think. Hold on. Hello? Okay, don't yell. Okay. Alright, bye. Alright, apparently I'm destroying people's eardrums when
I get excited too. It's okay.
Yeah. Apologize, guys, for, destroying your eardrums. Okay, let me think about this. Okay, so now we've figured out a couple of attributes of moments of enlightenment, right? Okay, so then we were also talking about laziness. We were talking about the fear of death.
Do you want to know what's weird? Is that I think the moments of enlightenment enable the laziness.
Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, I think that fundamentally the understanding of, kind of eternity and infinity makes the current problems that you have seem less important.
I think
it doesn't really matter anyway. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think that the moments of enlightenment, this is subtle. I don't think the moments of enlightenment actually encourage laziness. I think the moments of enlightenment are hijacked by the part of you that is lazy to justify its own ends. Because during the moment of enlightenment, your laziness actually decreases drastically. What happens is when the laziness returns to your mind, it takes the experience of the moment of enlightenment and it uses it for its own ends.
I can't disagree with that.
Right? So it's a subtle difference, but it's very important. So when you actually are in a moment of enlightenment, you're the very opposite of lazy.
Yeah.
You're not controlled by your emotions, you don't seek distraction. And then what happens is the lazy fucker slides back in and he's like, hey, you remember how you were enlightened earlier? If you were enlightened earlier, like, we don't need to worry about anything, bro.
Yeah, everything's gonna be fine, dude. Just don't worry about it. It is what it is.
Exactly. So, but now let's think about it. Don't worry about it, bro. Is that a thought that comes from the moment of enlightenment or something that it isn't the moment of enlightenment?
I don't know. That's a really interesting question. Do you think that it doesn't?
Yeah, so I think that the moment of enlightenment has a very similar thought, but in a completely opposite direction. So there's a huge difference between apathy and detachment. So in the moment of enlightenment, you can acknowledge that things are as they are and you cannot control them, and that's okay. And yet let us eat and let us not be concerned about the future. Let us do the thing that we need to do now. And there's a very, very small, there's just a razor's edge between detachment, which is letting go of the consequences of your actions, not concerning yourself or being controlled by the future, and accepting fully what is in the present. There's just a razor's edge between that and apathy, which is the future doesn't matter.
Yeah, the nihilism of it.
Yep. Right. So it's a very subtle difference, but it's just like it's subtle, but it's gigantic. It's the difference between what I would call detachment, which is vairagya in Sanskrit, and apathy.
I really like that a lot. I agree. I think that growing up, I was just very used to just detaching myself from things and, accepting things for how they are. And because of that, I don't really, it's hard for me really to motivate myself to do something because I can just very easily not care about it.
So there's a difference. So I think you're doing both. I think growing up, you did both. So there's a difference between not caring, right? So like, just think about this. So there's a difference between not caring and appreciating what you have. So I think when you were growing up, I do think you had moments of enlightenment, and that's why I think you were happy despite being poor. Because at the end of the day, the end of the day, what I did for both the guy in jail and the investment banker is teach them detachment, and both of them got happier. It has nothing to do with your external circumstance. Yeah. So I think what you were able to do growing up is like appreciate your life for what it was, even though it may not have been good. But there's a difference between appreciating it for what it is and not caring about it.
Okay.
I think not caring is laziness. Appreciation and acknowledging it for what it is the moment of enlightenment.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a razor's edge, and it's like enlightenment versus nihilism, and oftentimes it's it's really just making those moments of enlightenment and everything, making them fundamentally more healthy. In a way,
the moment of enlightenment is perfectly healthy. You can't make it more healthy. What you can make more healthy is the laziness that uses the moment of enlightenment as ammo for its own ends.
All right. Yeah.
Right? So that's the complex that you need to work on, which is like, what is that type of mind that takes your moments of enlightenment and uses them in the opposite direction from what your moment of enlightenment actually does?
Yeah. I don't really know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's talk about it. So now we get to laziness. Okay. So we've sort of navigated moments of enlightenment. I feel tempted to ask people a poll because I have no idea if people are following what we're saying. But Anyway, we can just keep going.
Okay.
Okay, can we
I think
just
most people will be able to relate to laziness.
Yeah, so let's talk about laziness. So
Yeah.
now I want, okay, people are saying yes. Okay, fix mic. Okay, all right. So now let's talk about laziness. Okay, so let's talk about, Zach, what I'd like to do is help you understand that your mind is not a monolith. That your mind is actually like a 40-man raid. And each part of your raid does like different things, and sometimes you're gonna get a Leroy Jenkins in there. The laziness is like the Leroy Jenkins, where it takes all the other 39 parts of your mind that are functioning well, and it says, fuck you guys, we're gonna go. And then it puts your mind in a situation where like you're fucked. And that's when like Leroy Jenkins is the reason that you can't get out of bed and listen to your alarm clock for 3 hours. Because there are all these other parts of your mind. Leroy Jenkins is also the reason why you know that there's something that you should do which is going to make you feel better, but then you choose not to do it and continue existing in the negativity. There's 1,000 voices in your mind that are saying, Zach, get the fuck out of bed. And there's Leroy Jenkins going, Leroy Jenkins! And then he just charges right in and is like, fuck the rest of you guys. Right? That's what your mind is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's true. I mean, I think that, there's always an internal struggle. And the worst part about it is that you know you're doing it when you're doing it. Like, you know that you're fucking yourself up. You're sitting there on your computer, not doing the shit that you need to do, not doing the work that you need to do. And you know you're doing it, and you keep doing it.
Yeah. So how the fuck does that work?
I honestly, the best way that I've ever found to understand it is because it's just simply easier not to do it. I can sit there and I am in a, the Isaac Newton,
Yeah,
Isaac.
so that's true, and also a really insufficient understanding, right? So like, let me put it, I'm going to rephrase it. When you say it's easier to not do it, I'm going to recalibrate that as your mind has like a behavior equation, and it has reasons to engage in the behavior and reasons to not engage in the behavior. And there are a bunch of variables for that equation. And when you say it's just easier not to do it, what I'm translating as is at the end of the day, the behavior equation is tipping into the negative and not doing. There's like a really complex calculation, and we can think about like using the bathroom, right? So we have like, when do we engage in the behavior of using the bathroom? Like, when do you go to the bathroom?
I mean, like, when I need to.
Right, but are there times that you need to go that you don't go?
Yeah. I mean, like, if I'm in the middle of something, I'll put it off until then.
Exactly, right? So we can see that using the bathroom has two variables. How available is the bathroom, and how much do I need to go? And there may be times where you go because even though you don't need to go, it's highly available. And there are other times where you really need to go and it has low availability, so you don't go to the bathroom. And over time, if you think about like even using the bathroom, there's like a little counter in your mind that is slowly ticking up. And as your bladder fills up with urine, like it's kind of interesting, right? Like how much do you need to go to the bathroom? It's not like 0 to 100% and it's linear. Your bladder fills up to a certain point, and the second it starts to stretch, that's like, I need to pee.
I do the same thing with filling up my car with gas. Like, I'll literally wait for the light to come on, and then it's like that'll be the one time that I have to be somewhere in 8 minutes, and I'll have to get gas. I'll be like, man, I'm gonna be late. And it's like, I think to myself, I'm like, bro, like, you could have done this, like, while you were driving to Wendy's yesterday afternoon when you had nothing better to do.
Yep.
But the one time I need to do that, and I keep doing it, too. I keep doing it. It's crazy.
And it's just like, why don't you pee every hour? It's because your body is not signaling. It's like, once we cross the bladder stretch threshold, then it's time to pee. And what you perceive as laziness is that your mental bladder is not being stretched until it's ready to stretch. And this is sort of like where we kind of operate between, and let me know if I lose you, okay? So like, generally speaking, gamers operate on an axis of desperation and complacency. And there's like, you're complacent, and then you get desperate, and then you're prompted to action. And then once your desperation goes away, like, you look back at yourself and you're like, wow, I studied like 18 hours in 16 hours. And that was amazing, and like I can't believe I did it. And then you go back to being lazy. You're like back into the complacency. And
Oh
then
God, I did that. Now I don't have to do it anymore.
exactly. So then you're back to complacent. So then complacent. Bladder is filling up, stretch. And then it's like, oh shit. I gotta do all this shit now. I could have done it all that during that time, but that's not how we work. So we have this really complicated behavioral mechanism in our mind that prompts us to do things and not do things. And it is my belief that it is the lack of understanding of that behavioral mechanism which we interpret as laziness.
I like that a lot. I think that's a very good metaphor. Yeah,
So-
I think that's very good.
Now let's think a little bit. Let's dig in, right? So tell me about laziness. What do you mean by that? Give me some data.
Well, I mean, having a thing that I'm supposed to do, and then
Okay, let's stop.
okay,
What do you mean by supposed to do?
something that needs to happen. So, like for example,
Does it need to happen?
Well, that's the conversation I have in my head, and it's like actually, we'll see what happens, right? Because the worst part about it is I've had times where I just put something off for so long, it actually went away. Like this has happened before, and
Yeah, so-
it's bad to have that happen because it reinforces the behavior.
It is bad to have that happen. So now
Yeah.
let's just stop, right? Because like I think the first thing you've got to do is recognize that your perception of the problem is not actually what your brain sees as the problem. And we didn't even get to the problem. We said there's things that I'm supposed to do. Hold on, stop for a second. What do you mean by supposed? Because your brain is like, bro, why the fuck do you need to clean your room? It doesn't make a difference. Like your brain is not going to let you walk 5 miles for a glass of water when you can get it from your sink. Right? Like your brain is fundamentally like this. Is the other thing is we're not lazy. We're efficient. We're designed to be efficient. Like kids, do you know why kids skip?
Why kids skip school?
No, why they skip? Like you know what skipping is like physically? It's kind of weird, right? Like kids skip. They start skipping at some point in their life, and then they stop skipping. Like what the fuck is up with that? And it happens like what age of kids skip?
7.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. Like what's up with that? The reason that they skip is because due to their height, their muscle, and their body mass, skipping is the most efficient way to move. There's a certain like magical ratio when they're a certain age where skipping is actually like more efficient than like walking or running. And it's a very brief window, and once they like cross that certain threshold, they don't do it anymore. And here's the other thing that I have a weird question. Have you ever seen a fat kid skip?
No.
Because they don't hit that body mass ratio. That's why fat kids don't skip. It's like bizarre. Like our brain is constantly iterating to make things as efficiently as possible.
Okay, so do you feel like, because obviously there are certain people, with the wide spectrum of people's like sizes and muscle masses and everything in adulthood, do you feel like the reason why people don't do it as much in adulthood is because of the social norm?
Skipping?
Or
No. So skipping naturally disappears like by the time you're like 12, right? Like you don't see
Really?
teenagers skipping.
Okay.
And that's just because it becomes inefficient. It's just an efficient way of movement.
So it's completely inefficient for an adult, no matter what
Yep.
kind of adult they are.
Yep, absolutely. It's
Wow.
like and that's why they start at 7. It's inefficient for a 5-year-old, efficient for a 7-year-old, and like by the time you hit 12 or 13, it becomes inefficient.
Well, whenever you see people skipping, usually after like a really happy event happens in their life, like you see us in movies all the time. How does that fit into it? Is that just kind of
Yeah, because at that point, it's an emotional expression.
okay?
It's not a mode of movement. But like kids will skip when they're not happy. They'll just skip. Like they'll just transit from one place to another through skipping. And it's just like a weird phenomenon, right? Like because they just start doing it around the age of 7, and then they sort of like stop. And some fat kids do skip, by the way. But
Yeah, I I'm sorry for asking so many questions about this. This is
No,
actually
go.
fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that you're right about being efficient. I've always been. I mean, I'm so efficient now that I found a way to have people pay me to sit at home and play video games.
Yeah.
Like I consider that this is the pinnacle of my efficiency now.
Absolutely, right? And so it's also the pinnacle of your laziness.
Yes, yes, it is.
So like, let's start by sort of, so you say it's things that I'm supposed to, and then you say I need to, right? And then you use this word need, and where do you get the idea that you need to? Because your brain is like, hey bro, like in the past you've thought that we've needed to do things and you turned out to be fucking wrong. So why am I going to invest all of this time and energy to do something that is unnecessary?
I'll give you a pretty strong need.
Okay.
And my teeth. See that? I'm missing teeth. I'm also missing other teeth that are easier to see, harder to see. They're not going to grow back, and it gets worse every day. Why do I not fix it? Well, I'm lazy, and I'm afraid of doing it. That's fundamentally what it is.
Okay.
And and this is how lazy I really am. These teeth are fake, but I only fix this side because I always look at this monitor to stream with, and I never really look this direction on stream, so nobody really ever sees that one.
Okay, so let's unpack a beautiful example. Okay, so let's think about this. Like, so what is your brain? I'm gonna rebrain that out of laziness. Okay,
Yeah.
You ready for it? So the first thing is like, why do you fix one side? Because your brain is like, hey, bro, we only really need one side. Because this is the way that we stream. So like, why would we fix both sides if we only need one side?
It's pretty fucking ridiculous when you verbalize it, isn't it?
No, it's not ridiculous at all. What I'm telling you is it's the exact opposite of ridiculous. It makes perfect sense. You even know why you fixed one side, because you only needed to fix one side.
Well, here's the problem though, is like, I believe this is true too, but then I tell other people that and they think that I'm crazy.
Yeah, so I want you and everyone else at home to start with the default of you're not crazy. Because very few people in the world are crazy. Just because you don't understand how you work does not mean that you're malfunctioning. This is the biggest problem with our entire generation.
Well, I agree with you entirely. I 100% agree.
They assume that ignorance becomes malfunction. When it has been my overwhelming experience that like the world makes sense and that human beings operate like not randomly, like we're not random, right? We have all these organ systems, we have a brain, our brain is a super complicated organ. It's not a super complicated organ, it hasn't grown itself, evolved to be this malfunctioning organ. It's in fact the exact opposite. Our brain is a hyper-functional organ, which has allowed us to dominate the earth and like level into space. And we think that the thing is fundamentally busted because it doesn't want to fix one side of your mouth. Like, no, man, like your brain has a damn good reason and you even know what that is. So now let's go ahead.
I'm very good at intellectualizing things for me not to do because, well, it is a good reason in that context. But if you only eat with one side of your mouth, let me tell you, there are problems that causes.
Sure.
And and ultimately, I just don't think about those problems, and that's it. And so, even though I know it will become more and more of a problem as time goes on, I just kind of let it happen.
Yep.
And I think that's really.
Oh, can you just stop talking for a second? Sorry. Just once. I don't want to lose because you're saying so much good shit. I literally have to write it down because I need to respond to it. So one second.
No problem.
I know sometimes this comes across as being an asshole. I really don't mean that, but like you were just talking about pure gold, and the answer is right there. So I really want to capture this. Okay.
I'm used to dealing with assholes all day. This is not actually being an asshole. Trust me. It's okay.
Yeah.
You need to turn the gain down on your Yeti.
Okay.
Put closer to you because when you yell.
Okay. I'm pulling it closer to me and the gain is down. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, feet. Oh, fuck. I lost it. Damn it.
Do you want me to say what I said before?
No. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, keep going now.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's kind of what happens is I will do something, and even though I know that it will have a bad long term effect, I will just do it because the short term effect is worth it to me. And you know, for some degree, I don't like going to the dentist. It'll make me take time off of streaming, so it would just be easier for me to just simply put it off. And intellectualizing these problems and thinking them through and rationalizing, well, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at that. It's the same as like in video games. You know, you have like one person that's really good at doing casting magic spells, and another person who's really good at, shooting a bow and arrow. And I always intellectualize this as I'm very good at doing certain things and very bad at doing other things.
Okay, I completely agree.
Yeah.
So this is what we're gonna do, okay? Hold on a second.
Okay.
I'm gonna do a little bit of a screen share, okay? I'm gonna actually try to draw out an equation for you. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna switch. And then I also have to screen share with you. Turn to the screen share. Can I not do that? Shit, you can't see this, can you?
Not right now, no.
Fuck. How am I gonna figure this out?
If you right click the turn on screen share.
Yeah, I tried.
What I do.
Tried that, but there we go. Now it works. Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
And you guys can see. Okay. So now we're gonna unpack the behavior. We're gonna call this laziness, right? So okay. So this problem is gonna be why doesn't Zach get his teeth fixed?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so your answer is because I'm lazy.
And scared of the dentist.
Oh, no.
Okay.
We'll get there because you're lazy, right? This is the conception that you have. Okay, so let's think about. I'm going to put an equal sign here, and I don't know exactly how this is going to work because I'm working this out. Okay, so like, let's say that. Oh, actually, let's do it this way. Let's do a plus column and a minus column. Okay, so reasons to see the dentist and reasons to not see the dentist. Okay, so like, so what we want to do is like either this is going to be this way or it's going to be this way, right? It's going to be either or. So, and then basically, as long as you're winning this, it's going to be a complete mess. Okay, so as long as it's this way, this means you don't see the dentist, right?
Yeah.
And as long as this is what you're doing, we call this lazy. Do you see that? That's what you conclude. Like if you're not seeing the dentist, you call it lazy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about reasons to not see the dentist. You're afraid. Okay. Yeah. Reasons to see the dentist. Your teeth is broke.
Yes.
Okay. So then let's think about this for a second. So you have the capacity to not think about things and distract yourself, right?
Yep.
So what do you think if I were to, I'm just kind of run with me for a second, right? So like what distraction does is essentially decreases the value of this variable.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you see that? Okay. So the better you are at distracting yourself, what happens to your laziness?
Well, it goes up.
Absolutely, right? So like,
yeah.
For us gamers, like here's the problem. There's like boomer distractions, which is like one downward arrow, and then there's video games, which are designed to make you forget. So what video games actually do is they shut off the parts of your brain that experience negative emotion. So this is why there's,
have you ever had a day where like your internet didn't work and it was like the most productive day of your whole month? I think that's yeah.
I don't know if that's actually happened to me, but I can totally get behind what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I remember days where my internet didn't work and I just painfully tried to distract myself in tons of unsatisfying ways, but still ended up procrastinating. That's honestly my recollection of days when my internet didn't work or I didn't have a computer. I didn't become
Yeah.
productive. I just distracted myself and enjoyed myself less.
Yeah. I'll actually have a very productive day if my computer stops working and my internet stops working because there'll be nothing else for me to do.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I'm glad you can have that experience. I think unfortunately many people don't have even that experience. So let me ask you this, okay? So now let's think about it's more and more of a problem. So does more and more of
Yeah.
a problem go on the plus side or the minus side?
Well, I mean, like, it'd go on the plus side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is? Why is it doing this thing? The fuck? Okay. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to learn something really important about the brain, okay? When it comes to the brain's behavior thing, how does it rank future rewards versus present?
Well, I mean, to ask mobile game developers.
Yeah.
You know, instant gratification is king.
Yep. So I want you to understand that like there's something funny going on, right? Like you say it's more and more of a problem in that it's going to be a catastrophic. It's going to be catastrophic in the future. So you would think that a catastrophic result in the future is going to bias you towards action today.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing is like the further off in the future it is, the less important it becomes because that's just how our brain works. Right? Like the animals that survive are the ones that like sort of bias themselves towards the present. Like when there were primitive human beings who were being faced by tigers, and if they thought a little bit, like if they thought in that moment about, okay, like if the tiger attacks me and I lose a limb, I won't be able to harvest or sow my fields. So like that's going to be a real problem. Like no, like that's dumb. Like the human beings who survived were the ones who faced the immediate problems, right? And so like the issue here is that sure it's going to be more of a problem in the future, but like today, what do you do instead?
Play video games.
Absolutely, right? So just because it's going to get worse and worse every day, that's not actually a reason for you to like do something about it today. It just means that you don't have to do something about it today. Because you can do something about it tomorrow. And then tomorrow rolls around and you can do something about it tomorrow. So in a weird way.
Yeah, that's about right.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's think about a couple of other things. So let's like think about this, right? So let's think about one side of the mouth. Okay, so if we change this to one side of the mouth, like if we're thinking about one side of the mouth, how does that change your equation? Because like then, is there an immediate benefit of getting your teeth on one side of your face fixed?
Yes, there is. Because that
Absolutely,
way,
right?
it would help the stream. I'm fine portraying myself as a degenerate, but I do draw the line at missing teeth.
Right. So like, what the interesting thing is that then what happens is like today moves over here.
Yeah.
And then once today moves over here, what do?
Just forget about it.
No, you get it fixed, right? Because you got that side. So we're talking,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Okay.
So
Just
that's
the one
why,
side of the mouth.
because like there's an immediate benefit to it, which is that when you stream, you're not going to look like a complete degenerate. And like,
yes.
and like this isn't going to make you look like a complete degenerate for a long time. But like, you don't want to look like you're okay with looking like a complete degenerate a year from now. Your brain is, even though it terrifies you. Right? And this is the other interesting thing is that the more emotions that you pack in based on your future failures, how does that affect our diagram? As you think about being a degenerate in the future, what do you think that does to your laziness?
depends. I mean, like, it could make you want to be less lazy because you wouldn't want to be a degenerate in the future, or you could just put more of it off into the future and think, ah, you know what? That's not happening to me right now. I'll deal with that then.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Great answer. Which column does shame go in? Does shame make you less lazy or more lazy?
Both.
Okay, excellent. So let's think about how can it be both.
Well, I mean, you go to the dentist, and they're like, they tell me about other stories about other people who have had the same problem. And it's like, yeah, this person was addicted to crack. This person was homeless or whatever. And then it's me, yeah, this person was just lazy. I mean, you kind of feel like a jackass.
Okay, so how does that prompt you? Does that tip the balance towards doing something or away from doing something?
Away from, because I feel self-conscious even confronting it.
Yep. So shame goes over here, right?
Yeah.
So the funny thing is that like the more and more of a problem that increases your sense of shame. And as your shame increases, you become more lazy. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think there's another like weird kind of circumstantial variable with this,
Sure.
which is they told me that they were gonna have to pull out all of my teeth, and then now they're telling me that they're not because I'm seeing a new dentist. So before, the reason I didn't get it fixed is I just said, fuck it, they're gonna pull them all out anyway, I'll deal with it later. And now, I have more of like a immediacy of fixing it.
Okay,
And
good.
so yes.
So now we can see like do you see how today puts it in this column and future puts it in this column? So you're even saying I have more urgency because like you can't it's become less future oriented, it's become more present oriented.
Yes.
Okay, so now
and people, well, because I thought before the damage was already done. And so it was like, you know what, who cares?
today puts it in this column and future puts it in this column. So you're even saying I have more urgency because like you can't it's become less future oriented, it's become more present oriented.
Yes.
Okay, so
And people, well, because I thought before the damage was already done. And so it was like, you know what, who cares?
right,
But now
exactly,
that
right? So the damage is done. There's no alteration. There's no alteration of your trajectory if the damage is done, so why would you edit?
Yeah.
That's not
It's annoying
lazy.
to eat, but yeah,
Okay, sure.
it's annoying to eat.
So now I'm gonna ask you, so like now the question, Zach, is like, okay, so all this stuff is great, all Oak or Dr. K. What the fuck do I do about it? Right? So let's think about this for a second.
Okay.
You know, how can I adjust these variables to tip the balance in the other way? If I want to do this, like this. If I want this to happen, what can I do to this equation to like make the arrow tip this way?
Lose the shame.
Absolutely, right? So now,
That's why I showed people on my stream.
so you
that's who I
decrease
am.
shame. Okay. What else can you do?
The shame.
Okay, sure. Accept whatever.
I think be less afraid.
Okay.
You know, in like kind of in the same as like there's a moment of enlightenment, there's also moments of courage.
Okay. Okay.
Take advantage of those.
So we're actually going to put moment of enlightenment over here. Right? So let me ask you, when you have a moment of enlightenment, what does it do to your laziness?
Well, we were talking before about how it kind of hijacks it.
Laziness hijacks it afterward, not during the moment.
Oh, burning it? Yeah. I do what I need to do.
Right, exactly.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So moment of enlightenment goes over here. So the laziness paradigm we'll talk about in a second. But then what else can we do to anything else that you can see in this equation that we could adjust to decrease your laziness?
Well, there's a lot of ways that you could say it, but make the future the future is more finite, and
Yep.
so because it's more finite, then
This
you
is
have
the
to
way I'm
make
going to
sure-
represent it,
Oh, perfect.
right?
Yes.
And now you said there's a lot of ways that you can say this. So the first thing that I want to point out to you is doing this logically doesn't help. Right? Telling yourself that you shouldn't be ashamed or that you shouldn't have fear and logically trying to overcome your fear or play around with this, philosophizing, laying in your bed, how does that affect your laziness?
It really doesn't.
Very good.
It
So
probably just
thinking
enables-
about your emotions does not actually change. Okay? So thinking and telling yourself I need to be focused in the present does not change it. Right? Like now we get to Vidya and Jnana. Vidya doesn't change behavior, or very rarely. It's not a good predictor of behavioral change. Jnana is it changes through experience. Right? So like this is where there's a shift in mindset to be present focused versus future focused. And this is like what all the Buddhists are talking about. Like Buddha wasn't a philosopher. It's become a philosophy. It's become something that's posted on Instagram. It's become something that's tweeted. But Buddha wasn't teaching philosophy. He's not a philosopher. Buddha was like a personal trainer for the mind. He was saying there's a systematic process to take your mind from here and move it here. There's a systematic process of changing your mindset to be present focused as opposed to future focused. You can literally train your mind. Huh?
Okay. You're looking at it more functionally.
Absolutely. It's all functional. And then we have, so on the opposite side of functional is something that the psychotherapists stumbled upon. And they said that if we actually sit with a therapist and talk about your fear and shame, something magical happens. People start putting their lives together. It's fucking weird. Like I can talk to someone, it's weird. I can talk to someone about, how they were bullied in high school, and then they start eating healthy and working out. And the reason it's like not connected at all, it's not like they're coming in and talking to me about, because sometimes they do that. People will come in and they'll say, how do I start working out? And then I give them a plan, right? I say, okay, you need to wake up every day. Here's your personal trainer. You got to go to the gym, eat these kinds of calories. And then what happens, Zach? When I give them a plan for being healthy.
They stop on January 2nd.
Absolutely, right? Because that's not a workout plan is like maybe a little bit over here. But it's very small. It's tiny.
Well, it's an emotional. You have to overcome it emotionally. I agree with that. I know that so one way that I overcame this with keeping my house clean is that I live with my mom, and I remember I was showing. It was something that I had done for her recently, and someone said that well, you shouldn't be doing this all the time because you're letting your mom live in a shithole. Which is for me, this is the norm. But I thought to myself, it's I am doing that, and I should be doing that. And that emotional revelation, it wasn't logical, the emotional revelation of knowing that I was allowing this to happen to her has caused me to be much more proactive in keeping the house clean and making things there were holes in the wall where rats were coming through, and I covered all those up. And I kept it clean because I realized that what I was doing and the laziness that I was exhibiting it was something that was hurting somebody else.
Okay.
It was
beautiful.
selfish.
So now we're going to understand 3 things. Me is over here.
Yeah.
Other people is over here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Absolutely, right? So the first thing is you said that you had to overcome emotion. So now when you're kind of saying at the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about death, I don't think is going to be productive. And I completely agree with you because overcoming emotions is not thinking about emotions. You use the word,
And so, Zach, I think you understand this stuff really well because of your language. You use the word emotional revelation. A revelation is not a logical conclusion. Do you see that? It's like revelation doesn't imply a logical thought process. It implies a light bulb in that. Literally, the root word of revelation is revealed, and revealed is something that you are the recipient of, not something that you take action on. You are fundamentally not in control when it comes to emotional revelation. It is the loot box all over again. It is the chest. It is the moment of enlightenment.
I think I've had that happen a few times.
Sorry, guys. Getting. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Working on it.
Yeah, I've had that happen a few times with like different situations. And the point where, you know, things that used to bother me just for whatever reason stopped bothering me.
Yeah, like that's weird, right? Like how do we even deal with that? Like what's up with that?
I think it depends on the thing. I used to be very self-conscious about the way that I looked, and then I think that as time went on, I just accepted it, and it was who I am who I am.
Okay, so now so now you're really starting to sound like a meditation catalog.
Is that bad or good?
No, I mean it's great. Like this is why this is what Buddha was saying, but it's not philosophy and it's not stuff that you retweet. Retweeting it doesn't matter. But acceptance goes over here, right?
Well, it's fundamental acceptance, right? Like I'm very, very skinny, and I used to like not want to take my shirt off in the pool
He's
or whatever.
identifying
I
with
think that it's
not
so
himself.
bad, but, like people making fun of me about it all the time on Twitch and like just constantly like giving it to me and just fucking with me about it. Like I just eventually I was like, whatever, you know, like I'm not going to apologize to these people for who I am.
Yeah, so that is, do you see how you used to have shame and then you moved towards acceptance somehow? But it wasn't logical. It wasn't like you woke up one day and you said, hey, they're gonna keep on making fun of me until I get used to it, and then my skin will get thick, and then I will accept that I'm skinny. That's not how it works. It's revelation. It's something that happens to you. It's not something that you do.
Okay.
Right? And now we get to the root of lazy, because what we're talking about here is that you cannot actually do anything. It's about stuff that happens to you. It's not about logically working through your fear and your shame. It's about revelation. Right? It's about mindset. These are things that happen to you, they're not things that you do. And now we get to this idea of like the reason that you believe you're lazy is because you believe you're in control. But you're not in control. You can't actually get your teeth fixed. What you can do is potentially see a therapist and roll the dice to see if you can cleanse the fear debuff and the shame debuff. You can roll the dice, or you can train yourself to be present focused instead of future focused. And each of these things that you do, like look at this equation. What do you think is going to happen with lazy?
Well, I think it'll go down if I lose those two things.
Absolutely. And then you'll start acting. So it's not that you're lazy, it's that your behavioral equation calculates you to inaction. And the problem is that we don't understand any of this stuff. Because, like, here's the biggest problem is that, like, this is all a black box. Right? This is what we see.
Yeah.
And so then we just call it lazy. And so it's no surprise that our entire, like, you know, Twitch is, like, super lazy. Why are they super lazy? It's because they have a ton of fear and shame. They don't understand. They think in the future. Like, just think about this for a second. They're always thinking about the future. One day, right? They're thinking about the future, and this is the other thing. So past is back here, too. They think about the future, and they think about the past. They have a case of the shoulda, woulda, couldas, and the if-onlys. If only this, or if only this. I should do this. I'm supposed to do this. I need to do this. All of those should is not in the present. It's in the future. If only is in the past. It's not in the present. The other problem that they have, and I know you want to jump in, but I'm feeling it right now, so I'm going to keep talking.
Do it.
The other thing is that they're always focused on me. And that doesn't mean that they're selfish. It means that if I were to literally catalog the number of thoughts in their mind, the number of thoughts about themselves far outweighs the number of thoughts about other people. Doesn't mean that they're good thoughts. They're just egocentric. It's I'm a piece of shit, I'm lazy, I should do this, I should do that. That person is so awesome. And even when you say that person is so awesome, if it's an appreciation of that person, it's not about you. Even when they think about another person, it's in reference to themselves. It's actually a thought about themselves.
It's a thought about themselves even whenever they're thinking about somebody else.
Because it's a comparison. There are two ways to think about other people. One way is a comparison, like, oh, that person is so awesome. The other one is appreciation. And appreciation makes them feel good, and comparison makes them feel bad. So even when they think they're thinking about other people, they're always making comparisons to themselves.
All right.
And so literally the percentage of time that they spend over here is 90%. And they only spend 10% of time thinking about other people.
And that's what I was saying about the selfishness.
Exactly.
Not
And-
anything.
And now we think about dharma, which is duty or responsibility. Because you aren't worth it, right? Especially like if you have fear and shame, your value as a human being is pretty low. Therefore, you're not even worth investing in. The thing that gets you to clean up your place is a sense of duty for your mom. And you're like, I can do it. It's okay if I